to the SIC Maui's Talk Stories. I'll be hosting today. I'm Seychelle, and today we're going to be talking about choosing a stand-up paddleboard. So this is one of the questions that I probably get asked about the most when people reach out, is like, what board should I get, right? And the answer that I reply with is actually not you should get this board or you should get that board, but the answer I reply with is a series of questions. So that's what I want to dive into today, is what are those questions? So if you're here and you can hear me, before I get into the nitty-gritty, just say hi in the comments. Let me know that you're watching. Let me know that the quality's okay and you can hear me okay, and that you're excited to be here with me today. And Doug, to answer your question, no, there's no frost in Florida today, actually. It's a balmy, like, I don't know, maybe 60 degrees. So we're very blessed here in Florida. It's a beautiful day for paddling. And yeah, so we're going to talk today about choosing a SUP. Again, one of the most common questions that I get asked about when people reach out and they have questions for me. So what I want to do today, again, I'm going to ask you a series of questions. So if you're somebody who wants to know what those questions are, or you're thinking about choosing a SUP, you might want to jot these questions down. You might want to take some notes, right? So jot down the questions that I ask and then write down your answers for them. Take some notes on what your answers are, what you're looking for in a board, and that's going to help you decide. So, I'm also here to answer questions. Use the comments to ask questions, and I will do my best to answer them here live. And if you're not watching live, if you're watching the replay, you can still leave comments and questions, because I will go back and I will read them after the fact, and try to do my best to answer them. And then at the end, I'll send you over to, like I said, I'm going to give you my advice, the questions I ask, some descriptions of what I mean, and then I'm going to send you over to the SIC Maui website where you can see what I'm talking about when I give you those descriptions that you look for when you're choosing a SUP. So how does that sound? I hope it sounds great. Y'all seem quiet today. Oh no, there you are. Cool. Hey Evan. Hey Martin. Hi Avi. How to choose a draft. Cool. Great. So one of my favorite things about this sport is that it is so diverse, right? Like, there are so many different ways to participate in this sport. Like, you can race, you can downwind, you can surf, you can fish, you can do yoga, you can do fitness, you can just go out for recreational and touring, and there's boards to suit all of those needs as well, right? So, and there's inflatables too, and there's all around boards, and you're like, okay, it's no wonder it gets a little bit overwhelming. It gets a little bit confusing when you're choosing a board, especially when you're new to the sport or when you're trying something new in the sport, right? So the first question that I ask people is, what is your primary desired use for the board, right? So write that down. What's the primary desired use for the board? Because some boards are specific to their end use, and some boards can cross over and have multiple uses, right? Just to give you some examples of, I just listed a whole list of different uses, different ways that you can participate in this sport, and I didn't even list all of them. I think I forgot foiling, and I'm sure I forget lots of things, but for example, race boards would be, for SIC, would be the RS, the Atlantis, the Sonic. Downwind boards would be the Atlantis, the Bayonet, the Bullet, right? So the Atlantis is a crossover board. Touring boards would be the Okeanos, the New Mangrove, the Sonic, right? So Sonic is a crossover board. You have fitness boards, could be the Tau line, the Mangrove line. So I'm just gonna sneak over and look at my notes. So the Mangrove is a crossover board. You have surfboards like the Slice, the Saber, the Tau line again is good for beginner surfers. So Tau is a crossover board, and some of the all-around boards are the Tau, right? The Sonic and the Mangrove, right? So you noticed I said the Tau line and the Mangrove line and the Sonic line. I listed those in a few of the different categories because those boards are considered all around. You can use them for a lot of purposes. And then there's some boards that I did just list in maybe one category because that board's pretty specific, like the RS is to racing. Although I actually do have a lot of fun downwinding my RS as well. So, so you can get an idea about the different, how some boards are specific to their end use and some boards have some crossover, and you want to know what your primary desired use is and maybe what your secondary desired use is too, so that you can make sure that you're putting yourself in the right direction on choosing a SUP. So the next question is, what type of water are you going to be paddling on, right? Are you totally paddling in flat water? Do you paddle on the ocean? Do you paddle on a river? Is there moving water? Are there rapids? Are there waves? Is there a lot of wind and chop? What is the type of water you're primarily paddling on? Because you want to make sure that your board is suited to handle the conditions that you primarily paddle in, right? So, you don't need to know specifically, which boards are suited for which types of water. You just need to know which type of water you need the board to be suited for, because when you go and you look on the website, you're going to see the board descriptions are going to tell you this board is for an all water, this board is for flat water, this board is specifically for those types of things, right? So I do see your questions, Jack. Talk about the new Atlantis. Evan, talk about which boards I recommend for graveyard. So those are awesome questions, and I'll go back and I'll address those at the end. So keep the questions coming, because I do want to answer your questions. And so, primary use, what type of water are you primarily paddling on, and then what is your experience and your skill level? Right, and this is a question you want to be really honest with yourself about, because your skill level, your experience level has a lot to do with the board that you're going to feel comfortable on. So I'll show you something here with these beautiful boards I have behind me. Actually, I'm going to backtrack for 1 second just so you have, I listed what type of boards are for what. I didn't demo the boards that I have. For example, I'm in a mirror. This is the Atlantis downwind board, the RS race board. This is a Tau surfboard, right? So this is one of the all-around ones that I was talking about that you could use flat water surfing. It's wide, stable, you can use it for fitness. I have my Slice Pro SUP surfboard. I have an inflatable I'll talk about in a minute, and we're not talking about surfboards, we're talking about SUPs, but I did, SIC also does a really cool line of surfboards, so I put my long board, my Spindler up there as well. So those are the few examples of the type of boards that I use and that I'll be talking about. So your experience, what is your experience and your skill level? Because the board's length, width, and rail thickness. So here's the rail thickness, width, length, is going to determine the board's volume and also the board's stability. And in a large part, the board volume helps determine the board stability. And so why that's important to know your skill and your experience level is the less experience you have on a board, like when you start paddling, you're standing on an unstable surface. And your body uses stabilizing muscles. Stabilizing muscles are primarily helping your joints to help you stay in balance on an unstable surface. And so when you're not experienced standing on an unstable surface, like a stand-up paddleboard, you have to build up, just like any other muscle in the body that gets used or doesn't get used. You need to build up your stabilizing muscles so that you can feel comfortable. The more your stabilizers are built up, the more comfortable you are on unstable surfaces. So when you're new, that's why your legs get tired really quickly, or maybe they start shaking, or maybe they start cramping, right? Because your body's working harder to stabilize than if you are efficient at using those muscles because you've built them up. So, and then of course the conditions of the water that you're paddling in are going to contribute to how stable you need to feel on your board. And a good rule of thumb that I always tell people, and this is especially for racers, but for recreational paddlers too. Like for racers, I'll phrase it this way: the fastest board is the board that you're going to stay dry on, right? It doesn't matter if you're like, well, this board's faster than that board. If you can't stand up on it, even if you fall in 1 or 2 or 3 times, you're going to be slower than a board that you can stand up on and stay dry. Fact, right? And so to phrase this for a recreational paddler, you're going to enjoy the board the most that you are comfortable on, that you're not working super hard to be on, and you can't, the harder you're working to stabilize, the more energy you're putting into your stabilization, the less energy you have to deliver to actually paddling, right? So you want to feel super comfortable on your board so that you can take your energy and focus it not on just standing on your board, but focus that on actually moving yourself through the water, right? So yeah, that is my third question, right? Being honest with your skill and your experience level in relation to the type of paddling you want to do and the type of water you're paddling on. And then the next question is, will anybody else be using the board, right? Is this a board that's going to be used by multiple members of your family? Are you going to let friends and guests and visitors use it, and the main reason I ask that question is because you always want to cater to your largest paddler. So I'm going to talk a little bit more in a minute about board stability, and board volume. And the larger the paddler, the heavier the weight that the board has to carry, the larger the board needs to be in order to carry that weight. So, so if this is a multi-user board, then you're going to want to make sure that it is suited for the largest paddler. And that means, if there's somebody in your family that is smaller, they might have to, take one for the team, as they say. And another thing to remember with that is, if you are planning on paddling with your pup, come here, Oscar. He's right here. Come here. Come here. Oh, I hit the ball. Come. You want to say hi? If you're planning on paddling with your pup or with your kids on board, right? You want to make sure you take into consideration the weight of everyone involved on that board, right? So yeah, and then I like to, are you guys all still with me? Yes. Yeah, Bernie, it's sunny here. So the next question is, what where are you going to be launching your board? How are you transporting your board? I guess this is multiple questions in one. And where are you storing your board, right? Because for some people, having an inflatable makes a lot of sense because it's small enough to go into a closet, to go into the back of a car, to take on an airplane, right? And this bag is actually even bigger than the board itself, all rolled up. This is an RS inflatable. You know, they get pretty compact. So for some people, inflatables make a lot of sense. And for others, there's different construction and different materials that SIC uses to manufacture their boards. And so they use Dragonfly and Superfly to make like really lightweight, fast, also durable boards, like their race boards. Actually, the Atlantis and the RS I have here are both Superfly, right? They use Ace Tech and Tough Tech to make some of the most durable constructed boards that are great for, you know, family use, rental use, boards that basically, you know, you can really throw them around and they're not gonna get beat up, right? So if you don't have a place to store your boards indoors, you want to make sure that you have, a Tough Tack or a Space Tack construction board, because it can take a little bit more of a beating, and yeah. And if where are you launching? You want to make sure that how you're transporting your board. Do you have roof racks? All of those things are important to take into consideration when you're looking at what board you're going to choose. So I hope that also makes sense, right? And then the last thing is it's not actually a question, it's just to understand, what does board volume mean? I've mentioned it a few times. So again, the board volume is going to be determined by the length of the board, the width of the board, and the rail thickness. So more volume can carry more weight. It's going to displace more water, and it's going to be more stable. And so you want to make sure that when you're looking at a board purchase, that you look at what the volume of the board is and what the weight recommendations are for that board. And again, you want to be honest with yourself, not only about, okay, so this board, maybe it says that it could take a maximum rider weight of 75 kilograms and, hold on, airplane. It could take a maximum weight of 75 kilograms and I weigh 72, so I can totally jump on that board. But if I'm a newer, less experienced rider, I don't want to be jumping on a board that I'm at the maximum weight recommendation for, right? I want to make sure that I have some extra volume, some extra stability, so I feel comfortable. I'm not at my limit, right? And I want to also take into consideration, right? Because a board that's too small is not going to float as high in the water. It's going to feel less stable. And so I want to also take into consideration, right, the largest rider that might be riding on the board, as well as the skill level, as well as what water conditions, what's the primary water I'm paddling on, and what's the primary use of the board, right? So all of those things factor into making a board decision and understanding and what that means for you and what board you're going to be best suited for and most comfortable on and have the most fun on, because it's about having the most fun, right? So that's pretty much it for my, like, you know, the things that I wanted you to write down, take notes on. Okay, this is what I'm looking for, because then when you go and you look on the website, you say, okay, yeah, then this board is, I'm looking for a race board. Okay, great. Or I'm looking for a board that I can but that I could learn how to surf, but that I could also take out with my with my dog on board when I'm on flat water, right? So you'd want an all-around board, right? Like a towel board. So there's different, when you know those things that you're looking for, it makes it a lot easier to choose a SUP. So I'm going to go back and answer a few questions that were asked. And so if you have any questions that you want to ask me now, great, ask me now. And if not, you can always reach out to me at Seychelles SUP on Facebook and Instagram. And I'm always just so happy to take your questions and to help people, get into the sport of SUP or elevate their level of paddling and all things paddling, because I love what I do. So yeah. Then how to choose a draft. Oh, I think that was a joke. Okay, so can I talk about the new Atlantis? I just got mine like a week ago. I love it. I've taken it on the flat water. I've taken it on a pretty mellow downwinder. We haven't had great conditions in the last week to do a downwinder, but it's definitely, it feels really I have the 22. It feels really stable, and actually comparably pretty fast even on the flat water too. What I notice the difference when I go between the RS and the Atlantis is the Atlantis feels more responsive, right? The rail shape is different. You can see the two boards, they have a similar shape, but the rails are quite different, and that's what gives it that responsiveness that you would want when you're in more dynamic water conditions like downwinding. And again, a little more stable, probably because of the lower cockpit standing area. It's a little bit of, it's not a deep dugout, but it is a dugout. And yeah, I love it. I love the blue color. I'm a little bit more of a blue girl than a red girl. So yeah, I mean, I'm still using my RS primarily for my race training in flat water, and I'm just hoping for some windier, bumpier, surfier conditions to do some more testing on my Atlantis. So I hope that answers that question, Jack. I'm going to be using both boards. I'm not switching from one to the other. I'm fortunate enough to have both, so I'm going to use both. And Evan is also asking, which board do I recommend for Carolina Cup Graveyard? Would I make a change based on conditions? Again, I'm fortunate enough that I usually have a choice, right? So I often do. And this goes back to one of the things that I was talking about, like your experience and your skill level, when I said the fastest board is the board that you're going to stay dry on. So when I don't have a choice, I would say my go-to all-around board is the RS 21.5 RV. But again, for me, I'm a smaller paddler. I'm a very experienced paddler, right? So what that would be for somebody else is going to be, it's going to vary greatly depending on their size and their experience level, right? So graveyard conditions can be downwindy, can be flat water, can be choppy, can be moving, can be all of the things. So you want a board that you feel comfortable doing all of the things, right? So so that's what I would say with the graveyard is take not, if you don't have a choice, you've probably chosen a race board that you can do all of the things on. You have a good all water board, right? Like the RS or the Atlantis. And if you have a choice, you want to take the board that you are really comfortable on for the conditions that day, right? And I always say take the board for the ocean conditions primarily, because the fastest board is the board you stay dry on, right? And the board that you're going to have the most fun on. So I hope that answers that question. Paddling into the wind, Atlantis or RS, great question. I haven't done the RS upwind testing, but I should do that and let you know. I think the RS does great upwind, and the Atlantis is designed for downwind. It's got more volume in the nose. So just knowing what I know about board volume, one of the things I talked about today, the RS is going to perform, in theory, better upwind. That's what it's designed for, and the RS is designed to go better downwind, right? So, Bernie, I haven't actually tested that, but I could almost guarantee that would be the case. Eileen is asking, will I race the Atlantis in a bumpy condition? I think you mean like versus the RS, and it really depends. Again, I'm still testing the Atlantis. I think that it's going to be really difficult to travel to races this year and get equipment, right? Like one of the things with COVID that you guys have probably heard is like, are we going to be able to travel to races? We don't know. If we are we going to be able to get boards at those events? There's the board distribution, shipping, getting transportation, things like that are really going to be up in the air this year. So what board I would ride at a race is probably going to be the one that I can get there, right? Or the board that's already there. Like that's probably going to be the one that I would choose. So if it's a downwinder, for sure, take the Atlantis. If it's just choppy, I'm so comfortable on the RS. So that's my all-water, all-around board, right? And I've even downwinded it up until I have the Atlantis, right? So I would, so it just depends on the race. It depends on the primary water conditions of that race, right? So I hope that answers that question. And if you guys don't have any more questions, I'm going to wrap this up by saying thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being a part of the SIC Maui Ohana. And thank you so much to SIC for having me here to do these talk stories with you all. We're going to continue to do them bi-weekly. And if you have requests for what you want me to talk about, let me know, let SIC know. And a lot of the things that last week you guys were talking about, like, oh, I want to talk about this technique, I want to talk about paddling upwind, I want to talk about the catch, like, I did like a dozen or more talk stories in 2020 last year, and I talked about so many of those things, right? So go to the SIC Maui Facebook page, you're there now, and search talk stories with Seychelles, right? And there's so much. I mean, I'm gonna keep doing them, and I want to keep hearing what you guys want to hear about. However, there's a lot of that you're asking for that's already on there, and you can go and you can just soak it right up right now, and you don't have to wait. So, yay. Oh, Tommy wants to hear. Tommy wants to hear about my surfboard. I have the I have the Slice Pro 7.8. I love it. I love it. I started with the 8.8 when I was learning to SUP surf, and this board is borderline enough stability and volume for me when it gets choppy, but once I'm on a wave, man, it just feels so good. I've been surfing for a couple years now, but I still feel like I'm learning. But the Slice boards are just, I mean, they're a performance SUP surfboard that's super fun, and I'm not like a pro by any means. And again, if you get the board that has the right amount of volume for you, starting it a little bit bigger so that you can progress, then that would be my recommendation for that. So, okay. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, SIC. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and lots of love and sunshine from Florida.